Between Games, supporting community sport, proudly brought to you by GippSport.
Welcome to Between Games Sports Podcast, brought to you by GippSport. My name is Jean Perini, and I'm really happy to be here with my colleague Michelle Harris. How are you, Michelle?
I'm going fantastic. I'm really excited to be back on the podcast. I've been enjoying listening to the rest of the crew, and especially now that you can download the podcast on Apple and also Spotify. So when you're out walking around, you can have a listen. You don't necessarily have to watch us online, which is great.
Yeah, I don't actually know what all that means, Michelle, but I certainly, more we can get the message out, the better. So it's really good. Really excited today. We're going to be discussing ways on how to stay active during these continued restricted times that COVID-19 forces us into. And we specifically want to talk about the GippSport virtual physical activity challenges that we've had. We've had a couple of those, and we've got another one coming up in mid-August. There's also been quite a lot of organised sport that's been cancelled today due to COVID-19, and most recently with the spike in cases in Melbourne. Although we're not in lockdown here in Gippsland, there still have been quite a few local leagues and associations cancel their seasons during the winter season. So we want to talk about that we've got to be flexible at the moment in regards to staying active, and we're going to look at the role that active recreation plays and the options that we have in regards to that. We also want to look at what active recreation trends were before COVID and now in COVID. So it should be really interesting. We're going to soon to be joined by Matt Cameron, the Senior Project Officer of the Physical Activity and Sport Team at VicHealth, who will be painting a bit of a picture of what is happening from a statewide perspective, share with us his learnings around VicHealth's research into active recreation and doing sport differently. So, Michelle, with the slight changes in restrictions over the last sort of few weeks, how's your family cope with it? What impact has it had?
So since the original lockdown, there has been some changes in our household in that all of our activities stopped. We were quite busy before COVID, and then we had a bit of a quieter period. And then luckily enough, we were able to return to some of our usual activities. So living in Gippsland, we're very lucky. So for example, my son, he's a competitive swimmer, and he's been fortunate enough to be able to return to the swimming pool. And while it's not quite the same in that he only swims for 45 minutes, which is a bit shorter than normal, and there's no competitions, he's really, really enjoyed being back with his friends in the pool in the restricted options that are available. And the swimming club itself has been fantastic during this time in that they've run virtual challenges, Zoom fitness classes, and the coaches have really stayed engaged with the kids. So it's been great for him. And my daughter, she loves her dancing. So thankfully during the lockdown, the dance design program still offered up videos for the kids to do at home and new little dance moves to learn. And she's been excited to return back to that in limited ways as well. And judo is starting back this week as well. So that's really exciting. My husband and myself, we both enjoy our running, and we do like an adventure race and travelling all around the countryside. So it has been challenging for us to stay motivated to do our training, but we both run, and we've got little goals like little 5K challenges or running with a friend here or there, and we've managed to stay motivated. And thankfully also the other thing we like to do is hike as a family and perhaps go for a little drive and find somewhere beautiful, which is quite easy to do in Gippsland, and go for a bit of a family hike, which is good fun. And yeah, what about you, Jane? I see you get on the bike every now and then.
Yes, I do a little bit. I think we've all got to be inventive on how we sort of stay active at the moment with our normal organised sport potentially being impacted or stopped. I like to go for a bike ride when I can. Just last week, my senior soccer competition was cancelled, so that was pretty disappointing. We're still trying to train as a club, just intra-club, just to sort of keep that social connection going with our teammates and, having it's non-contact, but it's still it's better than not doing anything. My son plays soccer, and he was playing in a competition against Melbourne-based teams, so that's all come to a sudden halt. But again, like you said, his coach has been really good about giving them little challenges that they can do from home, and they are still training. But certainly things like you said, going for walks at the beach, jumping on the bike, whatever it might be, is a good way to stay active in this time of uncertainty. So we wanted to talk about the GippSport virtual physical activity challenges. We're really excited about them. We've run a couple now already, one in May and one in July, and lots of Gippslanders have been involved already. We've got another one coming up on August 15th and 16th, the weekend of. Michelle, can you give us a little rundown on exactly, for those of the people that don't know what it is, what's entailed and how they can get involved?
Sure. The premise of the virtual challenge is really looking at ways that we can encourage our local community to give 30 minutes of physical activity a try. And we wanted to choose something that was achievable for a lot of people. And we didn't want to put any barriers in place in terms of equipment or groups or locations. It was just straight up 30 minutes your way, any time that suited over the weekend. So we shared that on our social media platforms and explained it to those that we work with. And the first time around, it was just really quite a simple campaign and motivating people to just give it a try and then tell us their story through our social media platforms with a photo either of their recording of their activity or a photo of where they went, and they could post that in a range of ways. And we were wrapped with the take up in our first challenge with over 60 people giving it a go. And then we thought we'd up the ante for the second time and say, who else or could we get involved? So we started thinking about our ambassadors that we were really grateful to have involved. And we also looked at the ways that we could encourage organisations to get involved as well. So I know for our swimming club, I suggested to the swimming coaches they could encourage their kids to give it a try. So we had some families join us. So kids could go for a run or a bike ride and post their activities, or their parents could. And also my local running group, which is a social group, I posted in their platform, and they actually won the prize of the most participants for a community organisation, which they were rapt about. So it's all about 30 minutes of physical activity, telling us about it, and then we celebrate that success. And we also are aware that it can be really challenged to be motivated at the moment. So we're hoping the little photos of people giving it a try. Last time it was terrible weather, but hopefully those little posts over the weekend that people would have seen with people jumping puddles. We did have a great variety in the second challenge. We had bike riders, horse riding, some swimming in the ocean, believe it or not, some home fitness activities, lots of dog walking, love the cute dog pictures, and running as well. So there's really no limits to what you could try. Actually, the more exciting or inventive you get with the photos, the more interesting it is, I reckon.
I'm not big on challenges, hand on heart. That's just me. But I found I did them both. In the first one, it led me to contact a mate and go for a 1 hour bike ride, which I remember after it feeling really good, physically, but also mentally, because we had a good chat. And I probably wouldn't have done that if I didn't have the challenge for that weekend. And the second one, as you said, was terrible weather, and I really was not motivated to do much. But because of the challenge, I'd signed up to it. I went for half an hour, 40-minute walk around near where I live in Cape Patterson, and it was drizzling, and it was probably not the most pleasant walk, but it got me out, and when I got home, I felt a lot better. So just two examples of if you set yourself the challenge or you join the challenge, it can motivate you to do it when otherwise you might have found an excuse not to be active. You mentioned about 30 minutes. Now, am I right in saying that for the August challenge, we're going to slightly tweak it where people can choose different options? Can you elaborate there?
Yeah, we thought we'd put it out there. We know some of our Gippslanders have a lot of interest in physical activity, and we thought we'd create even more of a challenge for them this time. So you can still try 30 minutes, but this time you can also register for 60 or 90 minutes or even 90 minutes plus, and you can still complete that at any stage over the weekend. And also, if you do 2 lots of 30 minutes, you can have 2 entries into the competition. We haven't mentioned yet that we do have prizes. So we did have prizes in the last 2 challenges, which was sporting club vouchers, which was supporting our local sporting stores. And we'll have prizes again, and we're going to have prizes for the different categories as well. So the 30, 60, and 90 minutes. So there's a bit of extra motivation to give it a try. And also we were wanting to provide that option that perhaps if you've tried 30 minutes before, maybe this time you'll try 60 minutes. Or if you've overlooked the challenge before that you thought 30 minutes wasn't really a challenge for you, maybe you might choose a 90-minute option, and that might be something that you could really strive for over a weekend. So maybe a little longer walk or a bike ride that takes a whole section of a rail trail that you haven't been on before.
Yeah, it's a little bit more tailored to different people's, motivations and what they might want to set their goals on. So that's great. So how do you register? Is it as simple as going onto our website and finding out how to register?
Yeah, so there's a whole range of options. So on the GippSport website, there's a virtual challenge page, the GippSport virtual page, and it's got very clear instructions on there. So there's a survey registration link, very quick 1-minute survey. You just provide your details so we can contact you if you win the prize, and some very basic questions. Then over the weekend, you just record your physical activity. So you can do that on our Strava group, or you could record it on your any device that you might have, so using your phone, or then post that activity. And you can do that by either using our social media channels. So we've got GippSport and Gippy Girls Can on Facebook and Instagram. And we've also created an option in this challenge that you can upload the photos through our SurveyMonkey link as well. So you don't need to necessarily post on social media if you're not comfortable doing that. Or you can even text it to one of the GippSport staff and tell us your story. We're very flexible and accommodating with our rules here at GippSport. As long as people are getting active, that's what we're really happy to see.
Fantastic. There's different options, different categories. You're a local club out there, and you are just getting together to do training only. There's no reason why you couldn't all register for that session and post a picture of yourselves getting active and go in the draw to win the prize. So fantastic. So in regards to other parts of our community that are doing sport differently. So we've got clubs out there that are having to either run just social programs or training only, or maybe just contained within their own township. We're going to speak to Matt Cameron soon from VicHealth. But is there any tips that you would give to those clubs out there in regards to keeping the community playing sport in these times where there's a bit of uncertainty?
Yeah, I saw some activity this morning, which was great to see. Where our office here in Inverloch, we've got some brand new netball courts, which is just next to the main shopping area. And there was a group of mums out there doing some exercises together, and they're all socially distant. And we had obviously the younger children riding their little scooters, or they're running around having a play while the mums were doing some physical activity together, which was great to see. So it might be a netball club, it might not be, it just might be some friends that know each other, but we can think about different ways we could use our sporting infrastructure. There might not be any sport being played, but perhaps we can go out and use those spaces for other types of activities. On the Gippy Girls Can Facebook page, we had a great post today about playgrounds and parks. So what's some creative ways that you might be able to use playground equipment for some fitness activities? So some step ups onto a park bench or using the monkey bars. I wouldn't be very good at that. Or yeah, as sometimes in Inverloch we've got the foreshore path, we've got exercise stations as well. But in terms of the social connection, that's really important for community sport, and I know that our sporting teams or our clubs are missing that connection. So why not organise a group walk or a group get together for a jog, doing some sprints on the oval? There are social restrictions in place that you need to be mindful of, but we can overcome some of those and really think outside the square about what might be interesting to your members or family or other people that you're normally exercising with, and dogs. Lots of, like I mentioned, the dogs before, those dog walks and venturing in new places.
Yeah, the message is clear. Be creative, be inventive. Find out what the restrictions are and make sure you abide by what's in place. But certainly, get out and about and try and think of ways that can get you or your family and friends active.
Yeah, you might get some challenges though, in that I went from my first bike ride in some time and I didn't remember how to blow up tyres on bikes. So that was a good skill to teach the family or them to teach me. Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic. Well, it's time to introduce our guest for today, Matt Cameron, who's the Senior Project Officer with the Physical Activity and Sport team at VicHealth. He's been at VicHealth since 2011, and in his time has worked collaboratively with Regional Sports Assemblies like GippSport, state sporting associations, community sport clubs, and other partners to provide more opportunities for Victorians to be physically active. And today we get the pleasure to pick his brain and have a chat around active recreation trends and also get an insight into his knowledge of doing sport differently project that VicHealth has been leading over the last few years. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Michelle. Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Not a problem. So the current situation in Melbourne at the moment, how's the COVID-19 restrictions impacting you and your activity levels, physical activity levels?
Yeah, well, I mean, so we've been, I guess all of us at VicHealth have been working from home since about mid-March now, and the restrictions have changed throughout that time between March and now. But yeah, all of us have been home working remotely since mid-March. In some ways, that means it's probably made it a little bit easier to do physical activity in terms of I've saved about 2 hours a day commuting into the office in Carlton. So that gives me slightly more time to kind of, go for a walk after work, or I've got nearly a 2-year-old, so to go out for a walk with him after work. But I guess at the same time, probably reduced opportunities for that kind of incidental physical activity as well. So spending a lot of time on video calls, and probably not having the time of, walking around the office, walking around the streets of Carlton, walking from the train station, walking through the park, etc. So I think it's probably in some ways I'm doing more physical activity, and in some ways I'm doing less. But I know I'm not currently involved in community sport, but I know a lot of my colleagues are, and either their seasons that they've been taking part in or their sport programs have been cancelled or impacted. So or the seasons of their kids as well. So that's impacted on their physical activity levels for sure. And again, working remotely, and I guess more broadly, we've seen a lot of our sport partners. So we invest in a lot of sport organisations to introduce programs to get more people physically active. All those programs, or the majority of those programs, have had to cease due to the restrictions that have been put in place. So while we've been working remotely, we've been working with our sport partners to try to adapt their project plans and their kind of resumption plans for participation as well, because we do know it's going to be really important for all of us across Victoria to have access to sport and physical activity projects, or opportunities, I should say, when we're able to, when the restrictions allow us to, and when it's safe to do so. And I guess, we obviously sympathise with community sport clubs in the situation that they're in at the moment, in terms of having their seasons cancelled or plans disrupted. During my time at VicHealth, I've been able to visit lots of clubs out there, including many in Gippsland, and meet volunteers that are all working really, really hard. And I know all those volunteers are working hard at the moment trying to adapt to quite trying circumstances amongst a lot of uncertainty as well. So, yeah, we just acknowledge that that's the situation that clubs are in, and I know GippSport are supporting many clubs through that at the moment.
Yeah, it's really a challenging time, and for our staff at GippSport, we're continuing to support the community sport clubs, but we're also trying ourselves to think of inventive new ways to inspire people to be physically active. We have been working for some time with VicHealth on the This Girl Can campaign and our Gippy Girls Can program, which we're really passionate about here in Gippsland. And one of the activities that we've created through Gippy Girls Can and GippSport is our virtual challenge. And we only started a few months ago, and we talked about it earlier. But how do you think the virtual challenges are going, and how do you think they could impact physical activity levels?
Yeah, sure. I think the virtual challenge. I think the virtual challenge is a great example of how some of our sport partners and obviously GippSport in this case are adapting to those circumstances, like I mentioned earlier. So, in terms of a lot of the work that GippSport had planned to do throughout 2020, the majority of that wasn't able to take place in terms of some of the partnership work with us. So, a great example of kind of responding to community needs and recognising that there's a lot of people out there that want to be physically active and potentially they're not able to because what they were going to take part in is now no longer available. So, certainly, creative and innovative solutions to get more people physically active, and I think the virtual challenge is a good example of that. I know we faced something similar at VicHealth where you mentioned This Girl Can, and it was late February, early March that we launched This Girl Can for 2020, and we put the new TV ad out there, and over recent months, my colleagues in the social marketing team have been working really hard to put some online videos up with our This Girl Can ambassadors. So some of those include Bollywood dancing and yoga and strength training and others, and they're all available on the This Girl Can website. So that's something that we've had to do at our end as well in terms of adapt to the situation. But I think the GippSport one, the GippSport Virtual Challenge, I think a good example of a local solution as well. So we know that there's a lot of webinars going on. There's a lot of online activities going on, ranging from activities put in place by celebrities, global programs by celebrities, and they've absolutely got their place as well for people to take part in. I think one of the great things about the GippSport Virtual Challenge is that it is a local program, so it's made obviously in Gippsland and for people living in Gippsland. And I think those local programs do have a point of difference to kind of the big celebrity type programs as well. So people can, take part with some people that they know. I think the social media element of the program is really important as well. Some of the research that we've done before, some of the work that's informed the This Girl Can campaign, but some of the other research sort of suggests that social media can be a motivator for people to take part in physical activity. So the fact that people can go on, log their activities, but also share what they're doing on social media to show their mates or to show other people how they're remaining physically active, albeit at home by themselves or with their family. That can be a motivator for people, and also just shows that amongst changing circumstances and strange circumstances, that there's ways that we can continue to be active, albeit in a very different way to kind of traditional organised structured sport. And I think the program, like the way it's been set up, it's easy to understand, it's simple to follow, it's easy to take part and join. There's not much in terms of overhead, in terms of the things that you need to do to take part. It's quite easy for people to sign up. And one of the things about community sport, the restrictions have been put in place. We know that community sport is really, really important for people to have a sense of community, and whether that's as a volunteer or a participant or just a spectator or a family member. And that's one of the things that through the situation we're in, we've lost some of those opportunities for a sense of community just because we're not able to gather as we once were able to. So the virtual challenge can help to kind of fill that void a bit as well, in terms of bringing a sense of community of people all taking part in something all at the same time, potentially taking part with their friends, and also seeing other people across Gippsland doing it. So I think yeah, it's been a really good example of how can we do things differently? How can we use technology as well in a supportive way to get people active? And I think again, being a local program, the community can obviously drive that and continue to take part in it.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I'm a runner, so I'm often seen running around the streets, and so the virtual challenge suits me. 30 minutes of running on a weekend is great fun, and we've really observed here in Gippsland that there has been an increase in some of that walking and cycling and jogging or running perhaps. And what do you expect, or what do you think you might change, or what might we have learnt during COVID about physical activity in those ways?
Yeah, I think something we've been working on for several years now is trying to understand how participation trends around physical activity have changed over time, and I think it's probably important to note that before coronavirus was here, there was some significant changes in participation trends. So the evidence in terms of how people were taking part due to changes in lifestyles and competing priorities meant that in some cases participation in traditional club sport was declining, and participation in things like either social sport or active recreation were on the increase. And we also know, and obviously where VicHealth's interest is, we know that from a health perspective, we know that nearly half of Australians are not physically active enough to benefit their health, and they can have both physical and mental health impacts. So yeah, growth in activities that are more social and flexible in nature, and it's probably been over the last 10 years that data from the ABS and Sport Australia sort of suggested that was the case. Where we're at now is that there's probably a few factors. There's the commitment factor, so that's around both time and finances. So we know that we're in uncertain circumstances and people may be more conservative about how they spend their money. So that could include membership fees of a sporting club, particularly those that have been impacted from a financial sense with their work situation. So that might be part of the reason why people may continue to shift towards active recreation. So from a sport point of view, we may need to consider more flexible participation offerings, but also more flexible finance offerings for ways to take part. The other thing about active recreation, I think, is around people's preparedness to engage in certain settings. So one of the things about walking and cycling and other active recreation type activities is that you can do it either by yourself or with your close contacts, close family, friends, and don't have to go into a facility per se. So there's probably something around level of comfort, and this is probably something that might be in place for some time around what is people's level of comfort to go into various buildings and various facilities with groups of people. At the moment, the restrictions mean that that's effectively not possible. But even into the future, there may be some concern around doing that, and that's where active recreation may continue to play a role. We've been working with a range of partners now over the last couple of months around walking and cycling specifically, just because we know it's an area where a lot of us, as we've been going out there in the community, seeing a lot more people walking and cycling, because that's kind of one of the few options we've had available. So we're trying to understand the impact of coronavirus on walking and cycling, and that's both from a active travel point of view. So that's walking and cycling to get to destinations that we're trying to get to, whether that's to the shops, to work, to schools, etc., or walking and cycling from a recreation point of view. So just going out, taking the dog for a walk, taking the kids for a walk, going for a run, like you mentioned, Michelle. Some of our early research has found that it depends on people's circumstances, basically. So for some people, walking and cycling has absolutely increased, and like I mentioned at the start, I'm doing a lot more of it now because I'm at home, and it's quite easy to finish up work and then go for a walk straight away while I'm not commuting from work. So from that point of view, for some people, it's gone up, but for other people that were using walking and cycling to commute to work, and now they're staying at home to work, their participation in walking and cycling may have decreased. So there's probably an interesting thing around people's situations probably going up. So walking and cycling probably going up from an active recreation point of view in many senses, because people are spending less time commuting, potentially going down because conversely people are spending less time commuting, so they're not walking and cycling perhaps. We also know that for certain demographics, so some of those structured active recreation programs for older adults, for example, a lot of those programs have stopped, and understandably, given it's a high risk audience for coronavirus. But some of those walking programs for older adults, which are fantastic in bringing older adults together to walk around the community, to meet other people, etc. Those programs are really important to bring those people together and provide a chance for physical activity and social connection. So potentially there's particular demographics in there that the active recreation side of walking may have decreased. There's some more early research as well that suggests that bike sales have gone up in some areas. There's some early research as well that says people may be nervous to use public transport into the future. So that could mean more people in cars, or it could mean more people walking and cycling. So I guess it's probably too early to tell. Yeah, I could just keep going.
Yeah.
The other thing we've noticed in Gippsland, probably over the last few weeks, with a lot of local leagues around winter sport cancelling, is that some clubs are looking at, you mentioned about offering social options for their sport. Some clubs are looking at the cancellation of their leagues is running sort of intra-club or in-house social programs or training-only programs where the members are travelling to bordering towns, so they're feeling more comfortable in doing that. And like you mentioned, the research that VicHealth has found is that there's lots of people moving away from the traditional format of sport. So do you think this is a real opportunity for some clubs to, because of the current environment, is actually trial some of these social sport programs within their club?
I think so. I think all three of those things are important. So traditional sport, absolutely important for people. Social sport programs, so programs that are more social and flexible in nature, absolutely important, and active recreation as well. And I think what we know is that different parts of those will suit different people. Social sport programs have got a role in terms of programs that might be more easy to take part in. There might be less rules. There might be changing the equipment, changing the rules, changing the times that it's offered. I think there could be programs that are introductory in nature, so to reintroduce people back to sport, or it could be programs that are emphasising fun and social interaction over kind of the competition side of things. I think there's a lot of examples of clubs trying to adapt to situations, and I think social sport could be an opportunity for some, and that obviously depends on their situation in terms of volunteer availability and financial situation. But one of the key pieces of advice that has come through all the research work that we've done with yourselves and other regional sports assemblies and state bodies across the state is the importance of consultation and communication with your potential participants. So I think for some clubs it's going to be about, if we can't run the season as we perhaps wanted to or hoped to, what else can we do? And a key part of that will be asking people, do you want to do something? What does that look like? What could we do to make that happen in a safe and responsible way? And then potentially putting something in place, whether that's a social sport kind of carnival type thing held locally, whether that's a round robin competition within the club. There's a whole range of potential things that could be in place. I think also in terms of returning to sport over the past few months, I've probably heard two main schools of thought, from the consultation that we've done. So one view is perhaps that people may have had time away from sport because of the restrictions and may not return because they're concerned about the risk, or maybe they now appreciate the free time in their lives that they now have that they maybe didn't have before. That's one view on one end of the continuum, I guess. Probably the other view is, and maybe the optimistic view, is that there may be this kind of built-up demand for some people within the community, and they haven't been able to be as physically active as they'd like, and they've been spending a lot of time in their houses, and we may see this demand for community sport and recreation over the next 12 months to 2 or 3 years. So this could be people that were playing and they just can't wait to get back, or it could be people that weren't playing and now they really want to for either health or social connection reasons. So I think that those two things aren't mutually exclusive. They could both be true, and there could be people sitting at all ends of that continuum or that spectrum. And I think the reality is that, as people, we're really complex and unpredictable. But I think as a sports sector, we just need to think about where people are at, the views on that spectrum where they might be sitting. Does that mean we don't run anything? If you're in a club, does that mean we don't run anything for the time being and we come back next year and look at what we do? Or does that mean there's people that want to take part in something that could be a social sport alternative program, and do we look at putting that in place? Or more broadly, over the long term, do we need to think about the range of things that we might offer in terms of junior sport programs, social sport programs, traditional sport offerings over the next 3 years, 4 years, and how do we start to resource those?
Yeah.
I think everyone's journey with physical activity is really different. We know that everyone in their lives has times where they do more physical activity and times where they do less. Some of our life stages research has shown that, when people move to a new town, or when they start a new job, or when they have kids, or when they finish uni, some of these major time points may be where people start or stop sport. And it's probably our job to think about those life changes where people have, and then how do we make it as easy as possible for them to re-engage in a program or an offering that suits them. But absolutely, social sport has got a role to play in all of this. Is there an option for clubs to introduce a social sport program if they can't run a traditional competition, and how can we do that to suit people? Is there an option as well for members to self-organise as well? So how can we do this in a way where when we're able to, maybe it's about opening up the facility for groups to self-organise activities in a safe way. Jean, you mentioned the Doing Sport Differently website, so that's a good starting place for people to look at in terms of some key tips and advice in terms of how a sporting organisation could look at starting up a social sport program. That's based on 5 or 6 years worth of research and work we've done now with the sports sector. So with state sporting associations, regional sports assemblies and clubs, and our partnership with the Centre for Sport and Social Impact at La Trobe Uni.
Thank you so much. No, you did.
I'm not sure if I answered that question.
No, you absolutely did. And firstly, thanks for coming on, Matt, to share your experiences and thoughts. And I mean, what I get out of it is we've got to be flexible. And now more than ever, I think sport in the past has probably been a bit rigid in how we deliver sport. But I think COVID-19 in a way is forcing the sports industry to think differently and be flexible, where it probably should have been doing that before COVID-19, because there's lots of evidence, as you've stipulated, there's lots of evidence of is people want to be physically active in different ways. They're motivated differently. So this is a chance, whether it's active recreation in groups or by yourself, or whether it's a social sport, or whether it's, as you said, traditional organised sport. So it's a fascinating time that we find ourselves in, but I think sport can learn a lot from this period as well. So on behalf of GippSport and Michelle and I, thanks for jumping onto the call, and we hope things are easy in Melbourne over the next few weeks, and you get to run out there and get more physically active in the community.
No worries. Thanks again for having me on. Sorry that we can't meet up in person, but hopefully we can do that at some point. And I forgot to mention that we've got some research and survey projects underway, which trying to look at what is the impact of coronavirus on health and wellbeing, and looking at a range of health areas and a range of factors, but physical activity is obviously one of those that we're looking at. So that survey was out in May, June this year, so we're hopeful we'll have some results of that shortly, which will tell us a bit more around what are people doing at the moment, and what do people's physical activity behaviours look like, and what can we learn from that around options for active recreation, options for social sport, and options for traditional sport. We'll obviously share those results with the sector as well.
Right. Thank you so much.
I look forward to that, and thanks for your time.
No worries. Thank you.
Well, Michelle, that's a wrap for another Between Games show. I thought it was fantastic, really good conversation with Matt. Look forward to the next one coming up. How did you find it?
I always find it fantastic to listen to all the the great work that VicHealth's been doing in terms of research and survey and consultations with the whole of the industry to learn about how we can help community sport and encourage people to be more physically active. So, yeah, fantastic chat, and I'm looking forward to the next virtual challenge and getting out there for another run outside and sharing my photos.
Absolutely. So for the audience out there, make sure you register for the virtual challenge and participate in mid-August. If you're a sports club out there and you're wanting to run something socially, please let us know. Contact GippSport.com.au, and please follow our social media. And if you have any suggestions for topics in the future, please let us know. So for now, it's goodbye.
For more information on Between Games, visit www.gippsport.com.au. Between Games is supported by VicHealth and the Department of Health and Human Services. GippSport, supporting community sport.